Joel 2:28-31 in the Christian Standard Bible. After this, I will pour out my spirit on all humanity. Then your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your old men will have dreams, and your young men will see visions. I will even pour out my spirit on the male and female slaves in those days. I will display wonders in the heavens and on the earth. Blood, fire, and columns of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. Then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. For there will be an escape for those on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem. As the Lord promised, among the survivors the Lord calls. In this break of a scripture, the author just finished telling the warning of the Lord to the people of Judah. He's telling about the suffering that's going to come to pass for those who have fallen away from God. And here he's describing what will come to pass if the people of Judah repent and turn back to God. Olivia, Haste. How would you say this kind of encouragement of the blessings of God might be relevant for his followers today?
Yeah, I love this reading a lot. And I was thinking a lot about it in the context of a vision of radical hope and inclusivity. So after we're warned of devastation, this text promises God's Spirit will be poured out onto all people, young and old, children. There's no hierarchy. Everyone can prophesy. They can dream. They can see visions. And so I think that today this reminds us to look for God's Spirit in unexpected people and places. I think it challenges us to value voices we often overlook. And I think for me, at least, it means that God's Spirit isn't limited to the powerful or religious, but is for everyone God is calling. And I think in turn calls us to help build a world where that truth is lived out, right? Where dignity, prophecy, and vision are welcomed in all people and all experiences.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Hey guys, welcome to the Whole Church Podcast. Possibly your favorite church unity podcast. Possibly not. That's cool too. We're not in competition because that would be weird. I am Joshua Knoll. My main job usually is to introduce TJ Tiberius Juan Blackwell, who is not here yet. So hopefully, I'm thinking he's probably just asleep. Just when you're that powerful, sometimes you just got to sleep a lot. So hopefully that's what's happening, and he wakes up and joins us in the middle of this. We'll see. But I am here with one return guest, Russ Petrus from Catholic Women Preach, and he brought with him a new friend this time, Olivia Haste, Haste. I'm really excited to have her here, and Russ. We're gonna have a fun conversation, approximately 100 days into Pope Leo XIV. Not exact, because we found the exact number. Like, that would be cool. Then we realized we're not that coordinated. I don't even know when episodes we record come out most of the time. So just around 100-ish. We're going to call this 100-ish days of Pope Leo XIV. Again, their ministry, they're part of is Catholic Women Preach. I'm also learning the part of a future church, which I don't know anything about, but I'm learning. And today we're going to be talking about those first 100-ish days. And we're going to discuss what this Pope and the new papacy might mean for what they're doing with the Catholic Church concerning Catholic Women Preach. At the start of this papacy, whenever Pope Leo was first elected, we did have a conversation with Professor Chris Moreland, kind of on the background and expectations of this Pope. So if you're interested in some of that, you can go to that episode. This one's going to be more focused on the impact that this is going to have with Catholic Women Preach. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. Trying to do TJ's part of this intro, and I'm bad at it, and you guys know that because I keep getting put in this spot. Not keep, but more than I want to be, which is none. So be sure you check out the network's website, Anazal Podcast Network. That link is going to be in the description, and we're getting some new merch, some new T-shirts and stuff out. So if you guys want to check that out, we're going to be getting some Comfort Color shirts. So if you guys like those shirts, it's going to be in the store. That link's in the show description too. Could be worth it. And everybody does know I have a favorite form of unity, a holy sacrament we do on this show. That's silliness, because you can't be divided when you're being as silly as I like to be. So we're going to start with this Man, I don't know where I come up with these sometimes. Which character from Lord of the Rings would make for the best church leader, and which church office would you most like to see him or her occupy? I'll go first. Give you guys time to think about it. I'm not even really sure how to answer. I want to say Samwise, but like he'd be a terrible church leader because like his whole thing is just wanting to stay at home. Like I feel he's not like a pastoral figure in any way. Maybe he could be like a deacon doing, or like an acolyte doing like the work of ministry, but I don't see him doing like, preaching or like hierarchy stuff. I don't know. Struggle. Legolas could be a good bishop, maybe. I'm unsure. Russ, help me out.
I think those are both great answers. I was going to go with Eowyn. She has
like
that
that.
great scene. Speaking as a Catholic, of course, she has that great scene where she's face to face with the Witch King, and the Witch King says something like, "No man can kill me," and she rips off her helmet and she says, "I am no man," and then she vanquishes him. It's just a fantastic line, probably the best line of all the movies, and I think I would like to see her as a cardinal and hopefully eventually the Pope, because I think the men have had their shot and haven't done an A+ job. So perhaps it's time to give women their chance and see how they do.
When you're talking about like best lines, you made me realize like I should have said Gandalf, because he has that line where it's like, none of us get to choose which time we're born in, but it's up to us what we do with this time. And man, he's a good pastoral figure. I don't know if like office wise, he moves around too much for an office. I feel like. Olivia, where were we?
He's an itinerant after Jesus.
Yeah. There, perfect.
I must confess, I have not seen Lord of the Rings, and I did not have time to study. But I did ask my brother who he thought, and he did say Gandalf. And we talked. I actually disagreed with him because I only know the kind of cultural reference of "You shall not pass," and I was like, that doesn't feel like I really want a church leader to say that to anyone. But he did say that Gandalf would be a good pick for like sage wisdom, and in terms of church office, I think all of them are in need of some sage wisdom. But honestly, maybe just like a really great pastor of a parish. That's what I'm going with. Tough answer, because I don't really know the lexicon, but I wanted to participate.
That works. I'm gonna show true nerd colors and go like way beyond like book stuff and like into like the weird Tolkien lore, which this is all Catholic, so it's fine because Tolkien's Catholic. But with the "You shall not pass," why I think that line actually makes me more in favor of the Gandalf pick. For those who don't know, Gandalf is one of the Ishtar, which is basically like an archangel. And so are all the Balrogs. They were just corrupted archangels. So when he's facing down a corrupted archangel, which is, kind of like a demon, I would guess, depending on your theological leanings, and he stands it down and says, "You will not pass," talking about the fellowship, which, what's a church other than a fellowship? I don't know. Sounds like a good parish pastor to me. Yeah. I think I'm defending that one. That's a good stance.
Gandalf has that other great line with Shadowfax the horse, and he says, "Run, Shadowfax, show us the meaning of haste."
Yeah.
And I was actually really interested in Shadowfax, actually, because I think in some ways, especially speaking as a Catholic, the Catholic Church can move slowly. It's known for moving slowly. And some of the things that we need to change, I think we need to do a little bit more hastily. So Shadowfax was actually my second runner-up to show us the meaning of haste.
Man, yeah. I mean, it would have gotten a lot worse if I had just said like all of Middle Earth instead of specifically Lord of the Rings, because then you get into like The Hobbit, some of the Silmarillion. I'm like, man, there's so many good characters. It's almost like Tolkien was really aware of his own faith tradition. It's crazy. No, yeah, I could talk Middle Earth all day. If you guys want to hear me talk more about Middle Earth, I am part of another podcast, Systematic Ecology, and we talk about fandom stuff over there. So check that out. But I'm going to leave it today because I don't want this to become a Lord of the Rings episode. But today we're going to be dividing up our question into two separate kind of rapid sections. I'm going to ask you guys a few questions about Pope Leo XIV, what we're thinking about him. Then we're going to reflect afterwards, kind of as a whole, on your answers, and maybe get them a little bit more conversational style then. So first set of questions, we're going to ask them about your thoughts just on the Pope in general so far. And then later we're going to ask some more direct questions concerning the future of women in ministry, that kind of stuff. So first up, however you guys want to do this, we'll let Olivia go first, and then Russ. And then for the next round, we'll let Russ go first, and then Olivia. That way, being fair. Okay, so Olivia, starting with you, what expectations did you have when Pope Leo XIV was first elected Pope, and how did his first 100 days measure up so far for you?
Yeah, this is a great question. I feel like a lot of people in our bubble of church reform and that kind of world, I think a lot of us were preparing for a pope to do a 180 from who Pope Francis was.
Mhm.
So when Leo was elected, I was really excited and really hopeful, definitely hopeful, but cautious, and not totally ready to be like, this is the best thing that's ever happened. I think in the last 100 days, though, I've been um, really grateful for how he has spoken out about injustices in our world, specifically the crisis happening in the Middle East, or the crises happening in the Middle East. And I've also been really grateful for how his ministry seems to be one of repair. I think there are a number of people who have been alienated by the church, whether that was during Francis's papacy or before Francis's papacy. And I really see Pope Leo as a bridge between many communities. It's really early to kind of say that definitively, but I definitely think that my expectations continue to be met. Obviously with some area for criticism, because the Catholic Church, as Russ said earlier, moves notoriously slowly.
I thought you were going to say, because this would be a boring podcast if there was zero criticism. We're just going to say,
not
good
too,
job.
that too. No, we're not just going to say good
across
job.
the board.
But like for now, I'm cautiously optimistic, cautiously hopeful. And yeah, we'll see where we go.
I do want to comment real quick for clarification. You mentioned kind of after Pope Francis thinking they were going to do a 180. You were talking about like before he was elected Pope. They were thinking it was going to be a 180. And then after he was elected, you felt a little bit more at ease.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for Russ or like the entire community of like-minded, Catholics who are kind of in this justice reform area, but I do feel like I was ready to mourn the progress that we had made during Francis's papacy. And I don't think that progress is lost, especially with Leo's emphasis on synodality, because even if Leo throws away a number of things that Francis was really focused on, the synodality piece really continues to pull lots of groups to the conversation.
Yeah. So that helps me as a Protestant. I don't know all the ins and outs all the time, but I know just for context, I was reading a book of an author we're going to have on the show soon, and she's a Protestant who's also a marine biologist, and she quoted Pope Francis, and I'm like, okay, this is a like-minded Protestant, because we're the ones who like Pope Francis, and I don't know Pope John enough, or Pope Leo the XIV enough that I'm like, am I gonna feel the same way about him later on, where I'm excited when someone quotes him? We'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what his first publications are.
Yeah.
And his first writings.
I got at least 2 books with Pope Francis back here, and it's like, I'm not Catholic, but man, everything he wrote and like said, I was like, it resonated with my soul, like Lord of the Rings. All right, there we go. We tied it in. Russ, same question, man.
The circle is complete. Yeah, I tried not to go into Pope Leo's papacy with too many expectations, but more so just having some hope. I think that Olivia said, like Olivia, I was relieved when he was announced, and I remember being excited that he had chosen the name Pope Leo the XIV and what that all meant. I think my hopes for him were that he would, one, continue the synod process that Pope Francis had put in place, and really is sort of Pope Francis's legacy project. And by all accounts, he seems to be on board with that process and with that principle. So I guess he's met that hope. And then the other thing was that with a name like Leo XIV, I was hoping that he would be a strong advocate for the most vulnerable among us. And I think he's proven to be that so far too, especially with the way he's consistently, and I think very strongly, spoken out against the wars in both Ukraine and in Gaza. So he's meeting that expectation as well.
Yeah. I think some of this has to do with kind of recency for me, because I've changed a lot of my views over the last few years. I've constantly changing my views just on things in general. Just full transparency. I think it's partially just in my nature, and partially just because I have to quote Kingdom Hearts a lot. It's just people are gonna have to deal with it. I remember early on, this is like the first time I fell in love with a story. It was this game, and in the first game, it asks you what you're afraid of, but it gives you like 3 options. And as a kid, I was like, why would I be afraid of any of these? Like, one of them is like indecision, and one of them is like the future, and one is like, like, huh, what? And I don't know. Ever since then, I've always thought about like, why would you be afraid of being stagnant? And then the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, maybe I am afraid of being stagnant. Maybe that is my worst fear. Yeah. Anyway, so I think for me, I care a lot about LGBTQ community stuff. I've become more affirming in my theology recently, and I don't expect people to change their mind or views, or like different churches, especially like Catholic Church that has like so much tradition. But I know Pope Francis, just even though he, as far as I could tell, held to that theology that was more conservative than me, was so kind. And that's what I was afraid of losing. And I don't think we've lost that, from what I can tell.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think one of the things that was a hallmark of Pope Francis was this idea of encounter. Like, he was willing to encounter people, he was willing to be encountered by people, and I think that that's some of that kindness that you're speaking about. And I think Leo has certainly showed the same kind of willingness to encounter. And in terms of like the LGBTQ stuff, I do know at one point he was giving an address to the diplomatic corps of the Vatican, because of course the Vatican is its own sort of sovereign nation, I guess. So they do have a diplomatic corps. And he said something about, family being built on the foundation of a man and a woman, and people like went immediately like up in arms. I think both on the left and both the progressives and the conservatives. I think some of the progressives got a little charged up about that, and I think a lot of the more traditional folks were sort of like
read into it too much.
Sigh of relief or something. And that's just it was probably just a line that he said. And I do know that the Cardinal Hernandez, the prefect for the dicastery for the doctrine of faith, which is a pretty powerful dicastery in the Vatican post Pope Leo, has said that the blessing of same-sex unions, people in same-sex unions, will stand. So I think it's early still to say what he's going to do on all this kind of stuff. And I think he's going to not go it alone. I think he's going to try to bring the whole church with him.
Hey, whole church! Everybody gets bonus points when they use the phrase. Whole church. If you could get the whole saying "whole church whole" again in there, that's like triple points. And then like I'm trying to work in this like ecumenical reconciliation. That's like 4 points, because that's like that's like the big word version.
That's tough to say.
Yeah. I'm trying to with our teacher, I'm trying to convince TJ that I can work in like ecumenical reconciliation since 2019, like on the back, and he's like, Josh, that's too many syllables. And I'm like,
it's a lot of syllables.
People don't have to say it; they just read it. Yeah. Anyway, But yeah, no, I agree with you. I know we're taking a lot of time on the first rapid question, but I can't help but do this because I feel like it's one of the most important questions. Yeah, I like that sense of kindness. I still feel like it's there, so I appreciate that. Yeah, let's move on. We'll go back to some of this later on. I think when we're kind of just hashing out conversational style. But how would you guys describe? And I think we kind of already answered this, so that might help. How would you describe the tone or posture of Pope Leo XIV's papacy so far? Would you say like reformer, traditionalist, diplomat? If you had to like give like a 1 to 3 word, what's the style like? Olivia, up first.
Oh man. I was thinking like reforming diplomat. Like I think he's a
Ooh,
little bit
I
less
like it.
confrontational than Pope Francis at times. Pope Francis was very confrontational, and was very clear about what he
Yeah.
was saying. And I think I sense that Pope Leo is just a little bit more careful with how he says things. Um, that said, we're only a short period of time into the papacy, so we'll kind of see where that goes. But you said 3 words,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna leave it there for now.
No, that was perfect. That's right what I was looking for. Yeah, I will say to what you're talking about, I think it's really funny because early on when we started this podcast, Pope Francis reminds me of another friend of ours. I don't want to name drop because people think that when I say this, it makes him sound like a bad guy. But we started this podcast, and his advice was like, "Yeah, you have to have an enemy for the podcast. That's like what draws people's attention." And I think Pope Francis was kind of like that, where like he was really good at drawing attention. Like he was meant for social media. Like when he said something, now we're retweeting that, we're clicking it, everybody's in on it. And maybe Pope Leo XIV is more like us, where it's like whole church unity. That's less clickable, but maybe a little bit more meat to it when you dig in. Hopefully, Russ, where are you at with this? 2, 3 words. How
On
would
the
you
same
describe the style?
wavelength with I'm on the same wavelength with Olivia. I think I was going to use cautious diplomatic reformer.
Ooh,
I
oh,
think he's I
he
think
wants to
he's
get all
on
3 words.
yeah, he's on board with a lot of a lot of the reforms that Pope Francis, I think, put in place. I think he has a slightly different experience and skill set that's going to make that just a little bit go a little bit more slowly and maybe a little bit more smoothly.
All right, I like it. All right, we're starting to get a little bit better at the rapid thing. We need TJ for that because I'm the ADHD one. He's the let's stay on the rails one. But okay, here we are. Has Pope Leo XIV made any significant theological statements or clarifications that has caught your attention so far, Olivia?
Oh man. Okay, going first again.
You
I really appreciated
you get
the
round 1. He'll start first round 2. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay. The emphasis on baptismal dignity as a theological anchor really stood out to me, especially how he connects it to lay vocation. I think it lays groundwork for that synodal process, a participatory church, a church that brings in everyone and the voices of all people.
All right. I like that a lot. I was reading ahead on the outline. Didn't expect you to be so rapid. She's good at this. Glad it's not me. Russ, same question, man.
Yeah, I've already the ones that sort of put some antennae up for me were his comments on family, just because I think it was in the ether. I wanted to raise that, but other than that, I'm still waiting to see what his first big writing is, what his first big letter is, or apostolic exhortation, and that will give us some meat to chew on. So I'm still waiting.
Yeah,
Joshua.
yeah. I grew up Pentecostal and converted Lutheran a couple years ago. So this year was actually the first time I practiced Lent. So I'm actually really excited for some of his writings and preachings around like Lent and the Easter, Mass and all that next year. I'm kind of excited to see where we go with it.
Cool.
Get some time under his belt and then see what he does. All right, Olivia, we're still in round 1.
Yep.
How has Pope Leo XIV engaged with the global south so far? So like Africa, Latin America, Asia, all these places where Catholicism is actually growing the most rapidly in our time.
Yeah, sure. I think the early signs are definitely strong, especially the ways in which he's been outspoken about the wars going on around the world. But I think that it's clear he's named several advisors from the global south. has referenced climate justice and migration explicitly in his preaching and his public speaking. So I definitely think that he understands where the energy of the church is moving. And I think he has personal experience ministering in the global South, which I think is invaluable.
Yeah, yeah. I found this question particularly interesting. So I want to dig a little bit deeper into it because, he was the first American pope. So I think there was a lot of expectation for him to be more focused on America. And it's like, that's not where the church is at. But at the same time, with what America is doing, we can't not address that. So I feel like he still addressed it, but you don't think his focus has been primarily on America. It's more where the church is growing at.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that his focus is on America, and I actually think, I mean, without becoming too potentially political.
It's fine. I
Yeah.
regularly say on the show that I think Donald Trump is evil and the church should speak out against it. I know not
Cool.
everyone agrees with me, but I try not to beat around the bush,
Okay. Yeah, I think, something I've been saying to a lot of family is like we have these two kind of figureheads that are Americans, influential Americans, right? We've got the Pope is an influential American, and we have the President of the United States who's an influential American. And in my head, there is like this clear, these two clear strains of like moral vision, right? There's the moral vision of where our country is going, and there's the moral vision of the Catholic Church. And so I think, I think the emphasis for both of them in many ways is not on America, right? Like for our president, it's couched in this, right? It's couched in this focus on America, but it's actually focused on everybody else not affecting America. I'm gesticulating a lot. But I think that the kind of focus of Pope Leo too, like I think his ministry and his ability to connect with the global South inherently affects American Catholicism. And I think that American Catholicism for so long has been considered its own subtype of Catholicism, and like what does it mean for us to be one whole church? Ding ding ding.
Extra
I'm gonna hit
points.
the buzzer for myself. What does it mean for us to be one whole church, right? I could go on about this. I mean, I've when the Pope was first elected, I was really thinking about this kind of like foil relationship between these two really influential Americans who like both have the platform right now. I think it's so interesting, but I'll let Russ answer this question too.
Yeah. Well, I do want to say, because it's easier for me to take the heat since it's my show. And so let me first say that this is not reflective of Russ or Olivia's views, but for me it does. Yeah, I see where you're saying with the two strands. For me, it looks a lot like the battle of the soul for America. Are we going to go with Trump, or are we going to go with Pope Leo XIV? And yeah, they're both focused on other countries. Me, it's more, though, Trump to me feels like it's more about how can we show that these other countries are honoring us and showing respect to us, whereas Pope Leo XIV, what I've seen of him so far, is he's saying, how can we honor them? And I think that like approach, how we're approaching the other, that's also a nod to one of our other podcasts. So if you know, but how you approach the other, are we trying to get them to honor us, or are we trying to honor them and serve them? And that's how I'm seeing it. And if that's not how y'all see it, that's fine. I just want to say that's my own views. And since you pointed it out, felt relevant. Russ, how would you answer? Like, how is he handling the South? Not necessarily having to focus on the Donald Trump stuff. You want to get away from that and talk about how Pope Leo's handling Africa, Asia, all that.
Yeah, it's intriguing to me because a lot of attention has been paid to the fact that Leo is the first Pope from the United States, and that's true, and that's significant, and I think that's important. It's something that we need to pay attention to. That said, I think it's really helpful to think of him as a global citizen as well. He spent a significant amount of time in Peru as a missionary and as a bishop there, and I know that a lot of Peruvians actually claim him as one of their own, and there was a lot of excitement in Peru when he was elected Pope. And certainly when Pope Francis brought him over to the Vatican to be the head of the dicastery for bishops, he had to work with bishops all over the world. So I think it's really helpful to think of Pope Leo as a global citizen with roots in the United States. He, obviously, like Olivia said, he has spoken out very strongly against some of the wars around the world, including in Africa. We just got announced that World Youth Day is going to be in Seoul, South Korea,
Sweet.
which is great. And I anticipate Pope Leo will go and be there for that. Another thing that recently came out of the Vatican is that, and this has sort of been in Catholic reporting for a while now, is that Pope Leo actually does have some Creole and Haitian heritage. And he recently welcomed someone at the Vatican who presented him with a family tree. And so that was sort of seen as an
That's
acknowledgement,
cool.
a public
Yeah.
acknowledgement of his Creole and Haitian roots. I think he's going to be very sensitive to that. He's a very strong pope, I think, in terms of Catholic social teaching and in terms of climate change. And I think you can't really talk about climate change with any credibility or authenticity if you're not talking about how it's going to impact, the people who are in those parts of the world that are just going to feel the effects greater than the rest of us. So
Yeah.
I have a high level of confidence he's going to be very good for Latin America, Africa, Asia.
Yeah, absolutely. And our listeners are regretting TJ not being here to shut me up, but makes me think of two things. One, I finally watched the new Superman movie, and similarly, not my favorite movie of the summer. Just want to throw that out there, but I think it's just as it was important that Superman wasn't just about America in that movie. Like, they made a point that it was a worldwide thing. I think I'm glad the Pope's doing something similar. So, got our nod to Superman in there. And then my nod for Lord of the Rings. You talk about caring for the earth and global warming or climate change. So I kind of prefer climate change for weird scientific reasons. Actually, we have a bonus episode that people can check out with me and Grace Jisung Kim, and I talk about why I prefer the term climate change during that. But my wife, for the first time, watched all the Lord of the Rings movie with me recently. And I remember going through the Two Towers thinking, man, if this was made today, people would be calling this woke. Because he straight up is like, hey, the planet is the good guys, and this guy doing industry tearing the trees down is the bad guy. And I'm like, man, I wish we could all just remember that, maybe. Anyway, so moving on.
Take a beat.
Go ahead.
Take a beat.
Yeah. Listen, if Tolkien, that's the thing. Like, if your good guys are starting to look like Lex Luthor and Saruman, maybe touch grass for just a minute.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so Olivia, it's still you. We're still on the first round of questions. Have there been any within the church? Have there been any administrative shakeups or crucial reforms during this time that you think are worth noting?
None that I really know of. Like, no, I mean, and I might just not really be well informed on this kind of side of things.
I know I'm not.
I'm interested to see how he handles different dicasteries going forward. And I was thinking back to the synod process, and there was the kind of faded study group 5 on women's leadership and women's diaconate, and it was sort of like, did it exist? Did it not exist? That was sort of the cultural lexicon we were living in of like, what is it? So I'm really interested to see how synodal issues are handled, right? So what is he going to do? Who's he going to put in those places? I'm not really sure as of yet, but I'm kind of excited to see what's coming down the pike for sure.
Yeah, me too. Russ, same question. Anything catch your eye as far as like a reform, shake-up kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the shakeups that haven't happened. He hasn't done anything to shake up the synod process. That has gotten delayed a little bit, naturally so. Pope Francis was ill for a while, and then literally nothing happens between when a pope dies and when a new pope is elected. And then I think he wanted to get to know some of the people who are working in that office and what they were doing. So it's back on track. It's been delayed, but it's back on track. So I think that's one thing. I do have to point to, I think, I don't want to call it a shakeup because it really wasn't a shakeup that happened when he was at the head of the dicastery for bishops, which is the department that's responsible for naming bishops. And they moved Bishop McElroy from San Diego to Washington, D.C. And Bishop McElroy is a very strong U.S. bishop, especially when it comes to issues around women, LGBTQ stuff, and finally, and I think most importantly right now, on immigration. And so he certainly had a hand in moving Cardinal McElroy to Washington, D.C. And I think that's worth pointing out. And then I follow that up with sort of the icing on the cake, I guess, is that then he appoints Bishop Michael Pham as Bishop of San Diego. So he's Pope now, and he appoints Bishop Michael Pham as Bishop of San Diego. And he's the first Vietnamese American to receive that appointment. And he's a migrant. So he's placed a migrant who came, I think he came over here from Vietnam when he was like 13 years old or something like that. So he's placed a migrant in California. It's hard not to see that he's doing some messaging there. So I think, it's not a shakeup really, but I think it's significant and it's worth paying attention to.
Yeah, just like some signaling, just kind of foreshadow almost. If this was a movie.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. You've got a question about this later on, but he has also appointed some women to some powerful places. So that's interesting too.
We're about to get to that. So that's we have one more. We have one more, Olivia, that you have to do first for this first set of questions. And it's kind of vague, but just in general, how has the Catholic laity and then maybe the secular culture at large, in your view, have they been taking to Pope Leo XIV so far?
This is a great question. I'm very active in my church community in Boston, and I feel like because I am a part of this world, I get asked a lot of questions. And Russ referenced this earlier, but Pope Leo made a comment like the marriage between a man and a woman. It was like very, I think it was very casual and like not intended to start discourse. Inevitably, it did, and I feel like the skepticism from certain groups of more progressive Catholics is growing because there's been less confrontation in Leo's dialogue than Francis, right? Like Francis just kind of came out and said what he said, whereas there's some more diplomacy from Pope Leo. So I think I'm sensing some skepticism, but overall in a similar way, I think people are really, really grateful for him. I also think too that many American Catholics are just excited that he's American. So there's something that particularly Catholics in the US can all bond over, the fact that like we all are, we all share something with the Pope, which has never happened for American Catholics before. Those are just kind of my first impressions of folks' responses.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I got a little excited about it too. And I felt kind of lame. Like it was like hey, our team won. I'm like, it's not really like a winning thing, but I'm like, man, it's kind of cool. Like I'm like, hey, one of us.
The social media has been hilarious. Like this Pope has had deep dish pizza. This Pope has driven through a McDonald's drive-through. This Pope has, gotten a flat tire on like this highway near Chicago. Like it's like so great. There's the relatability piece is you really can't beat, I don't think, as a human being, right? Like that's kind of what we all strive to do, is to relate to one another and know one another. So there's a sense of knownness, I think, that is really delightful for people.
Yeah. No, I love all that too. I do want to add in there because we kind of touched on it, and I think it's an important bit because it also because it happens to me. Maybe I'm just being selfish, but there is this thing on like the progressive side of not just theology, politics, everything, like where there's like this almost like elitism kind of idea of like as soon as you're like progressive, as soon as you become progressive, you're not progressive enough. Like it's always something like that. And I'm like, I know I get in trouble because I still call God a he, and I'm like, well, like. Usually when I'm talking about God, I'm talking about the Bible, and just as I do with literally any book, or I'm talking about the character, I use the same pronouns as the book. Like, even if I took religion out of it, that just makes sense. And I get pushed back on that and everything else, and like, I don't even want to call myself a progressive. It's just like, as soon as I took certain stances, people are like, oh, no, you're progressive. And as soon as I'm in that box, people, like, they want to push you away from them. And I'm like, it's almost like you guys want to lose. It's just so weird. It's such a weird dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, I think that at least my theology that I would qualify as progressive
Mhm.
is capacious, right? Like it's not meant to dictate what is right or what we are doing. It might be calling out some of the wrongs for sure, but I think that in response to your like kind of feeling like if once you're progressive you're not progressive enough, like I think at least for me, there is space and there is
Yeah.
room to kind of explore and connect with other ways of being church. Um, that might
Yeah.
not be true for you. I mean, I am an every
Yeah.
Sunday church going Catholic, but that's because I have a really great
Yeah.
church to worship in. If I lived in rural Nebraska, where like my options might be more limited than they are in Irish
Mhm.
Catholic Boston, where there's a church on every street corner, my relationship with church could be so different. And so I always say to
Yeah.
people, this wasn't really a part of the question, but I'm just going to respond
Oh, no,
anyway,
it's good.
is that there's room, right? There's like, we just have to enlarge in the
Yeah.
space of the tent. That was language in the synod document too, of like, and I think it was enlarge the space of your tent, create room. And that was about
Yeah.
women's ministry. But I think it's true for kind of opening the
Yeah.
door to all experiences of what church is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love all parts of the church. I think there's good on every side that I've been a part of or I've seen, conservative, progressive, whatever. I love the church. I just, I do know that in the progressive side, there can be said elitism sometimes. And it's interesting because it seems like the progressive side cares more like they want to nitpick your ideas. And the conservative side wants to just like, if you call yourself conservative, we like you. And if you don't use the right label, they seem to be more label focused. It's weird. I don't know. That's probably a podcast for another time or a blog. I don't know. Russ, where are we at? Where do you think the reception so far has been with Pope Leo XIV?
Yeah, one of the things that I love is Pope Bob. Is because as cardinal he was Robert. That was his first name. So now he's Leo, of course, but Pope Bob, which kind of does give him an everyman kind of feel and kind of vibe that I think a lot of people are tapping into, both in healthy ways and I think in maybe some not so great ways. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that one of the unhealthy ways that I've seen is that because he is so new, and I think because he is so careful, a lot of people are finding things to claim him. So people, the more traditionals are finding things to claim him as their own, and
Mhm.
progressives are finding things to claim him as their own. And I think a lot of people are trying to put him in comparison to Francis, which is fair. But
Mhm.
I think at least for a little while longer, we need to let Leo be Leo and kind of let him reveal himself to us. And one of the things that actually more so than him being from the United States that surprised me is his age.
Mhm.
He's the youngest pope we've had since um, uh, John Paul II was elected. So it's
Mhm.
only a couple popes, but it's been
Mhm.
decades. Um, so we could potentially have this pope for longer than certainly we had Benedict XVI or John Paul, or Francis. And I think people who are rushing to claim him or say something too strong about him kind of need to slow their roll and understand that he has the luxury of time,
Mhm. Yeah.
and he will reveal himself to us in time. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but in
Um,
general, I think people feel positive vibes about him.
yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. Of course, I'm still convinced that part of the reason they elected a pope so young is to give him plenty of time to be on the whole church podcast. So, Pope
It
Leo
does.
14th, whenever you got time, man, we're here. We're here.
Well, and it's
We've been
great
doing
because he
this a while
speaks
now.
English too. So,
Yeah, it's
so
perfect.
you don't even need to
Yeah,
hire a
that was
translator.
yeah, well, that's what the only reason we were concerned about Pope Francis. Like, we want to have him on, but like, man, that English thing,
Our
that's a,
yeah, our Spanish is not that good.
yeah, mine's not.
So, yeah, and forget Italian.
Yeah. All right. Second round, rapid questions. There's a little bit less in this section because I figured we might take more time on this, but we'll see. Maybe not. um, I'm going to let Russ go first for this section, so Olivia gets a little bit of a break. She still has to answer the questions, though. But a little bit more specific concerning women's preaching in the Catholic Church and ecumenical efforts. So, Catholic women preach, whole church, podcast is kind of the stuff that we care about. It's ecumenicism, women preaching. Russ, if you're going first question, and I know you already have some answers. You kind of foreshadowed this. Has Pope Leo the 14th? Yeah, like a tease. Yeah. Has Pope Leo XIV made any statements or appointments that suggest a shift in how the Vatican views contributions of women in ministry or church leadership roles? So I know you had thoughts.
Yeah, certainly. I don't see anything shifting from where Pope Francis was. One of the things that Pope Francis did a really good job with was when he rewrote the Vatican Constitution that governs the Curia, he made it possible for lay people, which would include women now, to be in charge of all these dicasteries, all of these departments of the Vatican City State. And so he was appointing women to these positions. So, one way to think of it is Francis did a very good job of bringing women into administration, even if he wasn't bringing women necessarily into ordained ministry. And I think what we've seen early on so far from Pope Leo kind of tracks the same. So prior to his death, Pope Francis had appointed Sister Simona Brambilla, who is an Italian sister, I think. Don't quote me on that, to be prefect of the dicastery for the institutes of consecrated life and societies of apostolic life. So think religious. These are nuns, these are brothers. So the people, so she's in charge of that department. And there was some concern that maybe this wasn't the best idea to have a woman in charge of this dicastery that is sometimes deals with priests. So it was really rubbing up against people. And there was some speculation that maybe a new pope will overturn that. Pope Leo did not overturn that. He's kept Sister Simona in place as the head of that department. And I think he doubled down and he appointed Sister Tiziana Merletti as the secretary, the second in command of that same department. So I think we can see some continuity there with Francis. Again, I said, we shouldn't compare him to Francis, but I think we can see some continuity there with Francis in terms of that. He has made some statements in the past regarding women in the diaconate, and saying we don't want to clericalize women. If we simply ordain women to the diaconate, is it possible that we're maybe solving one problem but creating another? And I think that does that was him as Cardinal Robert Prevost, and certainly he was towing Pope Francis's line. So I think we don't want to read too much into that, and we want to give him some space to carve out his own response to these questions as Pope Leo. But as Olivia mentioned before, there is this study group, this Vatican study group called Study Group 5, that emerges from the synod process that Pope Francis had put in place, that is taking up the question of women deacons and ordaining women as deacons. And I don't see Leo getting out over his skis and doing anything until he has a report from that working group. And I think that's what I meant when I said that he was going to bring the whole church with him on these issues. I think he's going to wait and see where that study group lands, and then if there is anyone who is well equipped to make that decision and roll it out in an effective and smooth way, it's him. He's a good manager. He's a canon lawyer. He has a lot of experience in administration. I think he's got a lot of respect among bishops around the world. So if he wanted to do it, he's the right person to.
Awesome.
But no major shifts, I don't think, at this point.
Awesome. Okay. Cool. Olivia, same question. Any statements or appointments that stand out to you concerning women's roles in the church?
I don't have a whole lot to add on to what Russ said. I mean, I think this is something that our team has talked about a lot. But I did want to call out one thing that what Russ was talking about made me think of, which is that Pope Leo went to Catholic Theological Union in Chicago and was likely in his formation alongside women, and alongside women who were starting the conversation on women's ordination at the time that they were in formation. Like, I think it was a crucial time for the church, and a crucial time for that conversation. And so I think he has a unique perspective because of that. And while this doesn't totally answer the question, I think it's going to inform his appointments, and I think it's going to inform how he goes about this conversation in the broader church.
Yeah, and perhaps more than any other pope too. That's a really good point, Olivia. Perhaps more than any other pope previously too, he has worked with women. You know, and we know that when he was at the dicastery for bishops, there were women that he brought in to work with him. Certainly, he worked with women in Peru. He was well aware of the outsized role that women play in the church in some of these rural places in Latin America, given what they're allowed to do and what they actually are doing. So I think he has a different perspective and awareness. And the other thing, on top of being formed with women, he would have been taught by women too. Because, you know, in the Catholic Church, this is a relatively new thing that women can teach theology. I mean, this is since Vatican II that women could even study theology. So there's generational shifts that are happening, and we're seeing them come to, I guess, fruition with Pope Leo. We'll see how it all plays out, of course, but we're beginning to see that have an impact.
Yeah. All right. Second question in this sense, pretty similar. Is there anything? I'm trying to figure out how to word this well, actually. As far as like advocate groups such as, you know, Catholic women preachers or maybe other Catholic advocate groups for women preaching, is there anything that they're like, maybe y'all are pulling from concerning like what he's been silent about in this like first 100-ish days? You know, is there anything that he hasn't said that you guys are like, wait a minute, thinking about that?
Yeah, you know, not that I can think of. I don't think any of us is particularly surprised that he's been a little quiet right now. You know, Pope Francis spoke early on in a lot of gestures. So he made a lot of headlines for different things that he was doing. You know, and of course he gave these sorts of, you know, off the cuff, on a whim kinds of statements that I think, you know, got him a lot of attention. And I think he was unusual. I'll put it that way. He was sort of unusual in that regard. So I you know, if we're looking at the long line of popes over history, I don't think it's very surprising that we haven't heard him be outspoken on a number of topics that are important and close to us, just given his role in the church. But also, I think because we have this synod stuff going on, I think he's someone who really respects the process. I've heard from a lot of different people, you know, who are much smarter than I am and who sort of know a little bit more about his internal workings, is that he's big on listening. So like if you have a conversation with him, he's going to ask you what your perspectives are before he even opens his mouth. And in fact, I was just hearing someone say that like you almost have to like ask him for feedback or information, like, well, what do you think? So I think just his personality is going to be one that's more of listening. And so I think he's going to wait for this synod process to play out before he kind of weighs in on, especially these more quote unquote controversial topics, women, LGBTQ issues. Again, I go back to that. He's going to be cautious. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know, Olivia, if you're surprised that he hasn't spoken
Let's see,
out
is there Olivia, anything about the silence these first 100 days that you're
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. I think I kind of expected this, and I think his disposition of listening, as Russ said, is kind of what I'm resting on. Like I think there's a lot of hope in that kind of, you know, in that presence he's taken. But no, I was not surprised, and I don't really have a lot to add. I definitely have mixed emotions though, because like as a woman, I want I want this to happen fast, right? Like I want this to be like, you know, I was one of those people that was like totally devastated when the Nora O'Donnell interview with Pope Francis came out, where she asked if women would ever lead in the church, and he literally just was like, no. It was heartbreaking. So I think, you know, as I kind of prepare on a more like personally spiritual relationships to the church, like of course I want the quick like, yes, it's happening now, but I'm not surprised that it hasn't been that.
Yeah. I think for myself as an outsider, it kind of feels like the thing that's weird for me. It's almost like when you're talking to somebody and they need to think about your question, but they don't say anything. They're just quiet for a long time. It's like, oh, that's awkward. It's like, I kind of wish you would just be like, give me a minute to think about that. So at least I know why they're silent. You know, it's like, hold up.
Yeah. It doesn't have to quite be shadow facts show us the meaning of haste. You could take a beat, think about it. But you know what, like honestly, on this question of women deacons, the church has been thinking about this for a long time. And we've had 2, 3, maybe 3 different study groups look at this thing. Like, it's time to. I have an expression my great grandmother used to use that I can't use here, but I mean, I think it's time. I think, out of fairness and justice, I think it's time to do something conclusive on that, so that women, honestly, so that women can decide whether or not this is a space they still want to occupy. Or if they need to go to some other place where their gifts and their vocations are going to be respected.
Yeah. Oh, totally. It's really interesting as an outsider who doesn't who doesn't see tradition as authoritative as like the Catholic Church, for example, because it's like we're seeing, you know, tradition for so long, and it's like, okay, so women haven't been in these leadership roles, and then all of a sudden we're getting really good at like archaeology and history, and we're like, wait a minute, this might not have always been the case. And then it gets this weird area of like, is it still count as tradition if we find out that like at some earlier point it wasn't documented the same and it wasn't what we thought? And I don't know, it's as an outsider, you're just kind of like, ooh, I'm like on the edge of my seat. Where do you go with this? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to say.
It's like which tradition, or which, in some cases, it's like which Bible, which translation are we working with, which manuscript are we working with, and I think the same thing can be said of tradition. You know, like one of the things that I point to that just drives me crazy about this conversation is that there's always this question about, well, were women ordained in the Catholic Church the same way that the men were ordained, 1800 years ago? Well, no, but men aren't ordained in the same way as today as they were ordained back then either. Our understanding of ordination has shifted radically over 2,000 years. So to me, that's like even a false question. And it's disingenuous as far as I'm concerned. So.
But you did help us get to the next part in this rapid series. Because you're talking about like maybe women will need to know so they can decide if they want to be part of maybe churches that are a little bit more inclusive. So the next question, and Russ, you're still going up first. How might Pope Leo XIV's ecumenical strategy affect collaboration with other church denominations that are already ordaining women or emphasizing gender equity in leadership?
Yeah, I think this is a perennial question for the Catholic Church ever since the Second Vatican Council, when they were sort of trying to open themselves up more to especially other Christian denominations, is, what do we do with the fact that Pope Francis is eventually going to have to meet with a female archbishop Pope Leo is eventually going to have to meet with or any pope is going to have to meet with a female archbishop of Canterbury. Like, I mean, what do and how do you effectively say, like, I respect you, I respect your position, I respect your call, I respect your leadership, I respect your ministry, but you've got it all wrong in your tradition, and our tradition has it all right. It seems to me an untenable position to continue to hold. So it is to the detriment of our, Catholics' ecumenical efforts to continue to hold on to this tradition that women can't be ordained. So I think he's a diplomat. I think he's very good when it comes to unity. I think he'll be very good. But like this is always going to be subtext with any meeting and any gathering of church leaders. So
Yeah, yeah. Olivia, same question. How's his ecumenical strategy gonna affect collaboration with church denominations that are already ordaining women?
Yeah, this question made me think of my experience in my master's program. I went to Harvard Divinity School, which is a very ecumenical, even plural space. Like I wouldn't even call it ecumenical. I would just go straight to just like religious pluralism. Like anything goes there and any tradition is welcome there. And I feel like as a Catholic, I was constantly on the defensive for Catholicism because that was the first thing people would say. They would be like, how are you in a tradition in divinity school for no other reason than your own learning because you cannot advance in your institution. And then I would do the song and dance of like, well, and then I'm going to reform it, and but it's a long kind of withstanding tension that happens, as Russ said, when a meeting of church leaders is happening, but also when grad students are gathered in a place where they all identify with other traditions, right? So it's also disrupting ecumenical conversations that are happening at the dinner table. And so I think fundamentally, like a good relationship with Anglican and other Protestant denominations could build trust. I do believe that. But I also think, as Russ said, it's just going to be a fundamental tension because it is one of the first things that people kind of call out as an affront to ecumenism. I think at least.
Yeah, for sure. Man. Unfortunately, we can't solve that. Only you can solve that, Pope Leo XIV. So come on the show, let us know what the solution is, and we'll work with it. We'll help you workshop it. Yeah. So next one, Russ. Again, this is you. It's the last one for our rapid series of questions here. How is the Pope, in your view, how is the Pope balancing the desire for doctrinal continuity with the global church's diverse views on women in ministry, not just within the Catholic Church, but at broad? Because the continuity question, I know we kind of already touched on it, but that can be challenging.
Yeah, here I think is where Pope Francis gave him a really great gift in the synod, because this notion of synodality, walking together, is both an ideal, a principle, but it's also a process that Pope Francis put into place. And so, we're going to be getting some things coming out of, we've started this like 3-year process of like implementing some of the synod's proposals, and different churches throughout the world are going to implement those proposals in different ways that seem appropriate to their location. And then they're going to meet about it and talk about it, see how it's going, send in reports to the Vatican. Meanwhile, we've got these study groups that are going to continue doing their work, that it's a little bit more meaty, theological, looking at canon law, which governs the Catholic Church, seeing what changes could be made there. So he's actually got this great system already in place, thanks to Pope Francis. And if he just keeps it running, I think he'll be on a good path to keep that tension and that balance in play. One of the things that, again, I'll go back to, and again, I'm comparing him to Pope Francis, even though I said we shouldn't be. But, one of the things that I think Francis just didn't have the skills or the tools to implement what was coming out of the synod. I think he was really good about sparking the process and sparking that the conversation and that dialogue and that encounter. But I think Pope Leo has a different set of skills. He's an administrator. He himself is a canon lawyer. So I think he has the skills that will come to bear on bringing this all to fruition in the coming years. So I think if he just keeps on that process, it will serve him well in that regard.
All right. Olivia, same question. Just with the church continuity and this diverse views globally, how do we see the Pope handling this?
Yeah, I think Russ said a lot of the pieces that I was gonna say. And I don't have a whole lot to add to it, to be completely honest. But I think I will say, like, the emphasis, like, I'll just kind of return to that emphasis on listening, that emphasis on connecting, and an emphasis on, like, you know, framing diversity not as division but as richness. So, like, being able
Mhm.
to kind of create conversations that don't see difference of opinion. I mean, this was the synodal process, right? Of, like, creating conversations that don't see a differing of opinion as a bad thing, but as an opportunity for growth and change.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I like that. Well,
Yeah, I just want to add, because one of the things, Olivia sparked this. One of the things that is, I think, interesting for me, and I really want to keep an eye on coming out of the synod, is that at least Pope Francis was really invested in this idea that we can maintain certain truths and they can be lived out in different ways in the United States, in Germany, in Africa, in Asia. So, like, I think Pope Francis was open to a lot more diversity of expression of what it means to be Catholic, in ways that were appropriate for the location. And I think if Leo stays true to that, I think we could potentially see a situation where, say, for instance, he does say women can be deacons. We'll see, like, maybe that's something that happens in the United States. Maybe that's something that happens in portions of Europe. I think certainly Latin America is probably ready for that, as South America is ready for that. But maybe there are other places in the world that aren't quite ready for that. And he's not going to force that upon them, which you could see as a good thing. You could also see it as contributing negatively to the status and state of women in some of those places. But I think you can see a world where maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you couldn't see a world where there was some diversity within Catholicism that you can see now.
Yeah.
yeah, I know it is interesting. I think we're starting to see that more in just like denominations in general across the field, just because I think there's just so many different nuances within it now that it's like, unless we're going to just keep branching off until like there's every 5,000 denominations, at some point we're going to have to just say, okay, this is our I think if I'm remembering right, the ELCA that I'm a part of does have some churches where the pastor is a little more conservative, or like some of these churches are more conservative when it comes to like LGBTQ, where they're not affirming. So I don't think you're required to be affirming to be in the ELCA, but I think it just tends to be the case. And we're seeing stuff like that. Yeah, I think the Anglican Church does something similar in some countries where like they aren't required to do same-sex weddings, but it is part of the thing. But I'm not 100% sure on that one because I'm not Anglican.
Sure. Yeah, and I think one of the unique things for Catholics is that we really have to do some reckoning with our imperialization and colonization. And to say, like, oh, this European way of doing Catholicism is the right way and is the only way that we brought into so many places and ruined cultures and ruined spiritualities. I think we're starting as a church to, like, realize, hey, that was probably not a good thing. So I think there's going to be a little bit more openness to better understanding, okay, well, what does an African Catholicism look like? What does a Latin American Catholicism look like? And some more openness to that, I think, is a good thing and will only strengthen our church.
Yeah, I think that's part of why it's so encouraging to see that he is working more with some of these churches in the more southern countries like Africa, South America, some of the Asian countries that we mentioned earlier. So one thing, you guys talked a lot about the synodal process, and I'm thinking that might be the most important thing for us to look for in the future. For those who are less aware, and maybe we should have done this like an hour ago, but could you explain a little bit more, like, with this synodal process, what is it, what does it look like, and what should we be looking for, and maybe when should we be looking for some answers from this?
Yeah, so I don't know, Olivia, if you want to take a stab at this first, or if you want me to
you probably have a little more expertise than I do on the synod process. You did a lot more for it, so if you want to go first, that's fine.
Yeah, so synods are something that have been a part of modern Catholicism since Vatican II. They predate Vatican II, but they were sort of rejuvenated at Vatican II in the 1960s. Previously, what they were basically rubber stamps for a pope. A pope would convene a synod. Bishops would come together and they'd talk and talk and talk, and eventually just rubber stamp whatever the Pope wanted to do. Francis, however, had an entirely different vision of synodality, which he wanted people to speak frankly and openly and honestly. So we saw a number of different synods: synod on the family, synod on the Amazon, and then the big one is what he called, synod on synodality. So just if you were already confused about what synodality was, you were doubly confused. But the idea was to bring together the global church for significant discussions about how we are in community together, how we seek justice together, and how we govern ourselves, and who participates where, when, and how. And so this has been a multi-year process that has begun at the very local level, and it just sort of gets filtered up and up and up and up into the Vatican. And so we've seen 2 assemblies now in October of 2023 and 2024, where representatives, delegates from different countries come together, and they're bringing with them everything that has happened in their countries, all of the discussions, all of the reports, and they're talking about these issues. One of the innovations that Pope Francis made was that lay people could now be voting delegates. Previously, you had to be a bishop, or there were some cases where a brother, but not a sister, a brother, but not a sister, could vote. And he changed that. So now women can vote, laymen can vote on these documents. And we've seen a lot of movement just because of that. So we've had these 2 assemblies now, and now they wrote a final document out of the second assembly that has several proposals, and it's been handed over to the local churches now, the diocese, to kind of implement some of these proposals and figure out how to do this and figure out what it's going to look like, and then talk about it, write up some reports about how it's going, what's working, what's not working, what's changed because of the proposals that have been implemented. And then they're going to gather again at the end of these 3 years to have yet another assembly about it. So again, the church is moving slowly here, but this is actually moving more quickly than I think the church is used to moving. The one thing, in terms of those working groups, we are expecting some more information about what their findings are on some of these doctrinal and canonical issues by the end of this year. So originally it was supposed to be mid-June, but I mentioned that they had gotten delayed. So I'm hopeful that we'll hear something by the end of this year. That's what's been promised.
Yeah. So they're not quite moving at the speed of the Ints, but they haven't quite learned the meaning of haste.
Yes, exactly. Very good, Joshua. Bring it all together.
So I know we're coming up here on time, but it's just, as far as like anything else you guys think we need to know about the new Pope, your ministry, you guys specifically, do you think we see any like speed bumps when it comes to like women preaching or ecumenical efforts with the church, or anything like we're going to see a big push in any of these efforts, or nothing's changed?
I mean, I think that one of the hallmarks of our work is just like creating the space to do the things right now. You know what I mean? Like we just do it, right? Like we have Catholic Women Preach. So like parishes aren't letting it happen. Like we have a great resource for people to come and listen to women. And there's over 400 amazing preachers on our website for every Sunday of every year in our lectionary. And you don't even have to be listening to one of the homilies on time. Like if you just want to go be spiritually nourished, like just take a look around and pick one to watch. You know what I mean? I think like in terms of Future Church, which we mentioned is the organization that we're also a part of, it's just like creating connection and like supporting people who are doing small communities that are maybe nourished by Catholicism but aren't inherently Catholic. I think there are a lot of ways to be church, and I think there are a lot of ways to exist in church, and I think you can do it all. And you can find the spaces, and I think our spaces are those places for people to come and be fed in the ways that maybe the institution isn't feeding them.
Yeah, and I'll try to link Future Church and Catholic Women Church in the description. For those listening, if you've never heard a woman give a homily, and maybe if you've never heard a Catholic homily, I think just listening to other voices can really open you up to ecumenical efforts and goes a long way. Russ, you have anything you want to add before we start getting to some of our final things here?
I think Liv nailed it. So thank you, Liv. And I just want to thank you, Joshua, for your time and your interest in this topic.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll let Olivia go first, since you got the last rapid questions. You know, we do always like to ask our guest just for a single tangible action, something practical that people could do right now that would help better engender church unity. So Olivia, what's something practical listeners could stop and do as soon as this is over? They're done hearing me do the outro. They're going to go do this, and it's going to help with our ecumenical efforts. What would it be?
Yeah, I have two. I think the first is connect with people and hear their stories and ask them, you know, where God is in their life and whether they use God language to talk about God. So like connect with a person about the spiritual. And then my second is show up to things. I think show up to another church, show up to another community, if you're a part of a church, go to a ministry that you don't normally attend, and learn from what those people are doing and what kinds of communities they're creating.
Yeah, Russ, I'm gonna switch this up on you. If everybody just listens to Olivia, because I think she had great answers, and they start using God language with other people, and they start going to places, maybe different kinds of worship service, whatever. If they do what she suggests, what do you think we would see change in our listeners, in our world, and in our churches?
Yeah, I think the big thing that you'd see is that if people just could truly listen and hear each other and hear how God is active and alive and at work in their lives, we'd start treating each other as sacred. And I think once we treat each other as sacred, that changes everything. One of the things I was going to say was go out and advocate and witness for our migrant sisters and brothers. And you're going to find all kinds of Christians, all kinds of faith traditions doing that right now. And as a person of faith, who sometimes can be a little bit down about the way my particular church operates, it is inspiring to see so many people of faith out there advocating and witnessing for our migrant brothers and sisters. And again, that comes down to seeing people as sacred. And I think that changes everything.
Yeah, I like that a lot, especially, I don't know, I think you see a lot of times people talk about we're the body of Christ, and they use that to like shape one another up, and like you have to start behaving better, instead of we're the body of Christ, meaning just as sacred as I see Jesus, maybe I should see the fellow members of the body as sacred, perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's big, man. That's can be heavy. I think it's a good one to end on as we do one more segment before I wrap up. This is the easy one, I think. Just our God moments, right? We just talk about a place we've seen God in recently, with a challenge, blessing, whatever. Trying to think of how TJ word things. I don't know. He always makes me go first, give everybody plenty of time to think. I'm making TJ my God moment this time, because I thought maybe he was asleep or something, and I was like, man, TJ's not here, and I was upset. And during the recording, he showed me a picture of his car, and his car is very, very broken right now, and he's a little distracted. And I'm like, man, I feel a little guilty that I assumed you were asleep and not praying for your well-being. So that's my challenge, and I'm gonna go with that, and praying that TJ's car gets better. Olivia, do you have a God moment to share with us?
Sure. Yeah, I love the beach. I
Me too.
chase
Amen.
the ocean as much as possible, and I love hiking on the beach. It's like there's a state park near where I live that I love going to, and I love watching the sunrise. And I actually watched the sunrise this morning. over the water. And I feel like a sense of profound peace and just like this like moment of like assuredness, right? Like the sun is like always gonna rise. And so there's like something consistent about like it. To me, it represents like God's consistent grace, right? Like the sun is always gonna rise. So like, and God is always gonna be present to us. So that's my God moment. It's sunrises over the ocean.
Man, yeah, that's Also, I'm trying to remember whose quote this is. I want to say it might have been from Theoden, where it talks about even in the greatest of darkness, the sun will rise. You know, not a Lord of the Rings. There we are. Russ, it doesn't have to be a Lord of the Rings themed God moment, but if it is, that's fine.
Yeah, no, we had a little future church gathering over the weekend for people who live locally here in Northeast Ohio, which is where Future Church was founded, and it was intergenerational. One of the founding executive director of Future Church was there, and then one of our younger staff members, Martha, was there, and it was really beautiful to see uh, these different generations who have completely different experiences and different wishes and wants for the church, uh, all affirm each other and support each other. And that to me was a reminder of the continuity of sort of the communion of saints, that we span not only place, but we also span time. And it kind of put me in touch with this sense that that the work that we're doing, trying to make the church a little bit more open to women and women's voices and women's gifts, didn't start with us, and it's not going to end with us. And that takes a little bit of pressure off, honestly, but it also kind of fills you with this sense of wonder and awe that we're all in this together throughout space and time.
Yeah, just trying to make the whole church whole again. I have the most points now. Just wanted to point that out. No,
You win.
No, I do love that though, and I think that's one of the things that I've loved most about getting to know more Catholic believers as we've done the show. Is just kind of that learning more that those from the past are also still a part of the church, and part of my identity in Christ is wrapped up in that, and that's pretty freaking cool. Also, for those wondering, the quote is from Samwise Gamgee. It's in The Two Towers, and it is, "Even darkness must pass, a new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer." I don't know. I think that's just an important note to throw in there, since we mentioned this kind of dichotomy of the Pope and the President as leaders in this country, and choosing where we're going to go. Wherever we go, whatever darkness may come, the sun will rise. Thank you, J.R.R. Tolkien. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this one up. And this, again, is TJ's part, so forgive me if I stumble. But please, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, an enemy, or a cousin. Especially cousins. They're more obligated to listen than the others. So, do it, especially the closer we get to Thanksgiving. The more they're worried what you share with them is going to be brought up, and they're going to want to listen, so they don't have this awkward conversation of like, yeah, I didn't click that thing you sent me. Just do that. Of course, also I mentioned, the merch store. We're still working on those comfort color t-shirts. If you guys like comfort color shirts, it's going to be there. It's going to be nice. It's going to be comfy. Those thick shirts, as it starts to get cooler, it's going to be nice. Also, we are part of the Amazon Podcast Network, so if you want to see some of the other shows on there, TJ and I are on Systematic Ecology as well. We have the homily with Pastor Chill Will of Chapel Hill is on there. And My Seminary Life. I'm just trying to think of which ones I want to do with. Brandon Knight is another show on the network. So if you guys want to check those out, that link for the network is also in the description below. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Next week, we will be with Brian Recker, which is weird because we already recorded that, but it's fine. He's going to be joining us to discuss his upcoming book, Hellbent, and how bad theology around the doctrine of hell can be dangerous. After that, Dr. Pete Beck will be returning to the show, my former professor. He's going to be discussing his upcoming book, The Dark Night of the Soul, and his personal journey of wrestling with PTSD. And then following that, we will be having Dr. Ernest Lucas, a biblical scholar and vice principal emeritus of Bristol Baptist College in the UK, is going to join us to discuss the books of Daniel and Proverbs in the Bible and the relevance for church unity in our modern times. Of course, finally, at the end of season 1, Francis Chan will be joining us, but he doesn't know about it, so someone does have to tell him, or it won't happen, and he'll be like, what do you mean, whole church? What are you talking about? We don't know. So someone's got to invite him. Until next time.